Well, hello you wonderful people, I'm Amy, or AWayfaringFrog, and welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new here. Today we are back with another Sims 4 speed build, and it's going to be another build from the little career-inspired series that I started a while back. So the idea is that I'll take an item or an existing career in The Sims 4 and then design a house around that particular career or item. So like the fabricator, I've done that one before, where I created a home for a fabricator, including that particular machine, partly just because it's so awkward sometimes to use those items. I thought it would be fun to try houses inspired by some of these. So today we are going to be tackling something a little bit different, but I felt like with businesses and hobbies, it should work out really well. I haven't play tested the actual business myself, but I have play tested the build and everything seems to work. But we are building in Forgotten Hollow, and it's going to be a vampire themed one, hence the very Victorian style you can see we're creating here. And the plan is to create a plasma fruit tree orchard, or kind of a farm, so that the Sims who live here can grow lots of plasma fruit, and then there will be a bar inside the house where Sims can come along and have some drinks. The idea was it was kind of maybe vegetarian vampires, which seems like such a weird concept because it's obviously not vegetarian if they're still drinking plasma from other Sims. But because it's coming from the fruit rather than actual other Sims, I thought it would be a bit fun. I suppose that kind of seems like vegetarianism. I don't know. But anyway, that's the plan here. So these are good vampires. They're not scary evil ones. And you can see that the house is coming along quite well now. I went with a lot of life and death just because it's been a while since I built with those assets, and I just really liked the addition of the kind of deep reddy tone. It really reminded me of plasma, so it seemed very applicable to this type of build. And then the side pieces on either side of the house are just some really nice little sunrooms, which might seem a bit odd for some vampires, I suppose, but I imagined that they probably had some kind of UV protection all over the windows, so they could still be in there and they'll be fine. I'm actually building on a 30 by 30 lot. It's this Fledermaus bend, I think it's called. I don't really know how you pronounce that, but I have built here before. I did quite a big Victorian styled Gothic mansion. So this one is very different to that. And I feel like the standard builds that come in this particular game pack, Vampires, aren't my favorite. So I have renovated the Vitor's house, which is the dark grey one opposite. And I keep meaning to renovate Vlad's house, but if you've seen it, his house is horrendous, and it's just very, very overwhelming, the concept of renovating that. So I am planning to get to it around October this year. So you should see that on the channel. But anyhow, we are now just adding some nice decor on the exterior of here. I'm still obsessed with all of these vines and wisteria from Enchanted by Nature. And it's so, this particular swatch at least, is so kind of dark and gloomy. So it really worked well with the vampires world. And even though this is on medium wall height, the wisteria that I put over the door apparently still blocks the door, despite it being well above the top of your Sims heads. So I did switch that out for the one that seems to be okay, with Sims walking underneath it and things. So I don't really understand why it's got such a large hitbox, but oh well. I am also just sorting out the floor plan here. It's quite big actually. It is 3 floors, which is probably why it's so big. It doesn't quite look like it from the exterior because one of the floors is completely encompassed in a roof, and that becomes difficult later on because even though it is for vampires, I did feel like not giving them any windows in their bedrooms was a bit mean. So I end up adding a little bump out later. It's not my favorite part of the build, but it is on the back, and I think it just serves a function more than aesthetics. So you could always remove it if you hate it, but I would prefer to have at least one window in each of the bedrooms. Plus it was the master bedroom, so I really felt like it would be nice to have a window in there. We are just sorting out the garden area, and it felt a little bit too small initially. I was worried that I wouldn't have enough space for the orchard, but it ends up working out really well. I just kind of have it along the back strip of the garden, and yeah, well, we'll see it as it develops, but I wanted to use this vampire's pathway It's just got lots of nice colors in it, and again it has kind of a purpley tone, which again is the color of plasma in The Sims 4, which is The Sims version of blood, if that wasn't already clear, since it is a vampire build. I am just adding those plasma trees in. I just grab them from debug and then place them along this back strip of the garden. I do end up rotating all of them as well because they're all just in the same order, so I did that I think off camera, and as you can see they all look a little bit differentiated now, so it's not just repetition of all of the same trees. And then I wanted to have a border around all of the spaces, so I went ahead and added this one, which is from base game. And while I was looking through debug, I found this really cool arch which I really wanted to use, so I had it as kind of an entry to the bar area, because you don't go through the front door to get to the small business, it's actually around the back, and then you get in through the back door. So the Sims who live in the house would have to go through the bar to access their garden without going around the front, and people who want to visit the bar have to just go around the back, which I thought made sense. There isn't a door between the house and the bar, so as long as you assign everything as residential where you don't want customers going as well, they should definitely just happily walk around the back in order to get there. And then they can pass by all of the trees, which I thought would be a bit of fun. I did just want to add a bit of a pond in the front though, because it's actually useful for your Sims to fish for plasma as well. They can make fish and frogs into plasma packs. So I thought, just in case you fancied another way of getting some plasma for your vampires, because I personally find it quite exhausting keeping up with it. It's just a need that seems to go down really quickly, and it's a pain to get plasma. So it's just nice to have a surplus of it around. And you don't even get that much from the plasma packs or even the plasma fruit, so you need a lot. So hopefully it will be a useful build if you do decide to download it for your vampire Sims. And if you do want to grab it, it is available on the Sims 4 gallery just under my EA ID, AWayfaringFrog. It's also under the hashtag AWayfaringFrog, and the information for all of that is in the description down below, including details about the lot. I am adding in a bit of some of the foliage, as you can see. It's quite bright green, but I liked that, to be honest, because it's a kind of a farmy orchard area. It felt like, even though the rest of this particular world has very washed out colors, some of the brightness kind of works here. And then I wasn't sure about what to do at the front. I was going to add more plants in, and then I realized that it might be a fun space to have a fountain, because it's not something I often add to my Sims builds. So I went ahead and did that, and I add in a few items later which appear in live mode. So there's like water shooting out of it, which is just these little white dots in the fountain, which I thought was a bit of fun as well. And then in the back garden, I do start decorating this, and then the rest of it ends up being the last thing I decorate. But I just added a little bench section so your Sims can have a nice little rest while they're admiring their little orchard, and there's a fountain just behind that, which I thought was quite cute. And then your Sims, if you've got Love Struck, can sit there and just gaze at the stars repeatedly forever and ever, because that seems to be all the Sims want to do now on community lots. Although I suppose this is a residential lot, so I don't know if customers do it quite as much from businesses and hobbies, so you might be okay. I am just adding some terrain paint now. I wanted to have a little windy path. Well, it's kind of windy, not very windy, but going through the trees, and then I added some dirt around to make it look like it's been walked over and actually used. So I hope that is coming across. I also just softened the edges of the path using a bit of terrain paint as well, because I personally don't like how there's a stark contrast between the path and then the terrain on the ground. And I usually solve that by going around with a fence piece, but because you can't put fences right up to the edge of a lot, when a path meets the edge of a lot, it's really frustrating. So that's one of the reasons I added that bit of terrain paint there. So I think it's a good workaround. And now jumping inside, I just added a bit more to the floor plan, organizing where I want everything to be. And here's where I realized that the master bedroom has no windows. So I just added this little bump out, which I don't think looks the best. But like I said, it's in the back, so you can't see it that well. I don't think it looks bad. It just, in my opinion, looked better from the outside without it being there at all. But I also feel like having a window is more important than how the back looks when it doesn't look bad, if that makes sense. So hopefully you don't hate it, because it's there now. And again, at least your Sims have a window. And of course, the life and death windows, there's not much light that looks like would be able to get through anyway, so your vampires will be nice and safe. Although it doesn't matter in The Sims 4. It doesn't affect them if there's light coming through windows, which I kind of like. It would be annoying if you had to cover up every window unless your vampire Sims had that perk that allowed them to walk out in the sunlight. But it would kind of be interesting gameplay to have it. So I wonder if they'll ever add it to the game. Probably not, because I bet it will be a buggy feature and we've got enough bugs. But just decorating the bar area now, I wanted to have a little selling table, which is what this little table is by the door. I had the vampire compendiums for your Sims to buy, as well as a plasma fruit. And believe it or not, it's a plasma seed pack, but it does have a picture of garlic on the front of it for some reason. And I don't know what happened to the books, but when I put them on that table, they automatically got a little stand for them to be on, and then they changed how they looked. So I'm not certain how that works in game. Like I said, I didn't play test the actual business, to be honest, so I haven't seen any Sims buying off that table. But I assume it will just be the vampire compendium when it's in your inventory, because every time I put it on the floor, it just looked like the book. But when I put it on that desk or that little side table, it went on a stand and then had the mixology skill icon rather than the vampire compendiums. And also there were 2 of the ultimate vampire compendiums in debug, so I added both. One of them turned into that mixology front cover, and then the other is that purple one that was just sitting on the desk. I don't know what the difference is between the 2 or why there are 2, so I figured I'd just grab both. And then your Sims can stock those items. And then just adding a bit of decor into here. I used quite a lot of the Cozy Bistro kit. I felt like it suited the vibe of the life and death and vampire stuff really well. So I really like the color scheme is weird. This deepish purpley red with this almost yellowy toned wood. Not a color scheme I would usually choose. It's not really my favorite, but I think it works nicely in here, so I hope you agree. And I like the pops of the really bright purple from the chairs in the Cozy Bistro kit as well. I don't think I've used those swatches before because I'm just not a fan of the wood color, but I did like it here. And I had so much fun with this little feature where I made built-in armrests on that sofa using the Businesses and Hobbies planter box. Not great as an armrest, but it looks really cool, so that was fun. And that was another way of using that sofa. The tables didn't actually slot to it though, so your Sims wouldn't sit at the sofa and eat on the table. They'd just kind of sit on the sofa and I guess drink or eat from their lap. But it looked too cool to not use them, so I went ahead and added that little sofa in. And now I am just decorating the ensuite. I didn't show the other 2 bathrooms on camera. One is just a small toilet downstairs for the customers. Not that vampires really need it, but it's there in case they bring along a little human Sim, I suppose. And then the other one is the family bathroom on the 2nd floor. And now we are just doing the ensuite on the 3rd floor. So they all have very similar furniture in, so I figured I wouldn't put you through watching 3 bathrooms when this video is already really long. It's it's currently just about 30 minutes of the speed build itself, but of course I'll be touring the build afterwards and then there'll be screenshots, so I'm guessing it's going to be about up to 40 minutes by the time I have finished and upload it to YouTube. So go grab a snack and a drink if you haven't already, so that you are prepared for the rest of the video. But the ensuite, I used a lot of the life and death stuff, which I haven't used that recently, so that was fun to mix it up. And I brought in some of the sleek bathroom kit stuff because I just really love it for the purposes of making storage spaces. So I used a lot of that and I think they combined really nicely. And then into the kitchen, it's a very weird, almost W or M shaped one. Although now I guess somehow it looks like a snake to me. You know, this really classic snake game that people used to have on Nokias. That is how the kitchen looks to me, but I kind of like it. And then I added a lot of overhead cabinets just because having such a very cozy vibe. I don't know, that just all of the cabinets like this felt very Victorian to me. So I just wanted to make sure to add those in. And then I ended up using the Life and Death appliances as well. So we've got the fridge, sink, and the stove from that pack too. And again, using that kind of orangey yellowy wood tone, which I don't really love, but I think it works well here. And I used the Cozy Bistro kit again for this particular room because, again, very plasma themed in the color scheme, and I just like the fact that it matched the bar area. I figured the Sims who own this business would probably make the bar the same decor style that they personally like for their own house. So I think it makes sense for them to be matching in that way. And then I added a Life and Death rug under the dining table, which has quite a blue swatch to it. So that became my accent colour throughout the rest of the house. And I really did love that. I think it was a really nice find to go along with it. And it somehow works really well. So I'm just grabbing that rug now. And then I use another swatch with a bit of blue on it in the living room too, which is just to the right of this room. Adding a bit more clutter here and there though, I wanted to include some plants because just plants always help bring a room together in my opinion. And then I also added a stereo, which is from the Secret Sanctuary kit or the Bella Goth kit. I think it works really nicely with the style, which is kind of modern, but also traditional is what I was going for. I figured they've been long-standing vampires living in this house with this business, and I suppose eventually they probably renovate a bit of their house as it starts to wear down and things, so it's very nicely looked after. And I feel almost like it's too nice to be in the vampire world, but because it's vampires, I like to include builds in that particular world. And there's a lot of Victorian aspects to the house, so it just kind of makes sense being in Forgotten Hollow. I do have a mod actually, which means your vampire sims don't burn when they're outside in Forgotten Hollow. So even if it's the middle of the day, I guess the idea is it's so cloudy and dreary that they just don't get burnt from the sun, which I think is a really nice feature because it's so annoying, especially when the sims you're not playing with are just out and about in the world and then they end up dying because sims just can't look after themselves. It's really frustrating. So I thought that was a useful feature. It's not in my mods list in the description. Let me know if you want me to add it, but I only include the mods that I use for the purposes of building. Although building this house, I actually didn't have any mods installed. So my no curtain snapping tool from Ravasheen sadly was not around, so you might see me struggling occasionally to deal with the curtains because I am not used to them snapping to the windows anymore. But there was an update when I started building this and I just couldn't be bothered to update my mods, and so I just took them out entirely and lived without them, which wasn't as painful as I was expecting, to be fair. I didn't end up needing the tool mod particularly with this build, so that was nice. But now just decorating the living room. I was going to go with this TV, which was from the Christmassy event from 2024, but I changed my mind a bit later and used the one from the Secret Sanctuary kit instead, which I just think suits the room or the house a lot more. And then jumping back into the kitchen to add these little tiles, which are from the Enchanted by Nature pack. I think they're so cute and it brings in that blue tone while still having the purple around. So I really liked that. And due to the fact that they don't go around corners very well, I just added in some columns to help hide that, which I think works quite well. And then back into the living room, just adding a bit more decor here and there. I wanted to add some cushions to the sofas because I just picked kind of a creamy swatch for those, so they didn't have a lot of colour to them. And I grabbed the cushions from, it was the first ever event, but they have since become base game. Also, speaking of which, it looks like we're getting another cushion in an event in the run-up to the release of the Summer Kids Camp pack. I've totally forgotten the name of it, but I'm quite excited for that. I've seen a lot of bad comments about the events in general, and in particular that event that's coming up, but I don't know, I feel like it's free stuff. Sure, you have to play the game to get it, but it is free and it's nice to have these items. So I don't know, I personally have always been quite positive about the events. The only thing I don't like is if you don't do the event, a bit like if you don't buy an expansion pack in the early purchase period, then the items that you would otherwise get as a result of buying the expansion pack early are no longer accessible. I don't like that with the event items either. It really bothers me that once they're gone forever. I wish they just have them so like, okay, if you play the event, then you get them immediately, but otherwise you have to wait, like, I don't know, I don't want to put a time scale on it, but say 6 months or something, and then it's available for everyone. I don't really see why they have to completely lock it from people who didn't play the event. And the same with the early purchase rewards. If you buy the pack early, great, good for you. You get those items early. But otherwise, can they please just come in the expansion pack for everyone after a set period of time? Because it just feels like it's punishing people for not having the money or not being around when the pack is in the early purchase period. And it really bothers me. So anyway, I rant about that almost every speed build, I think. So let's move on. We have finished decorating the living room and we're doing the office now. It could be another bedroom if you wanted it to be, but I felt like there wasn't really a desk nook anywhere in this house, so I didn't end up adding one of those, although the master bedroom is quite big, so I suppose you could slip a desk in there if you wanted. But otherwise, I felt like this is probably where they do their personal accounts from their small business. And of course, having a computer in The Sims 4 is so useful, so I made sure to include one of those. And there is also one in the teens bedroom, so there are a couple of computers, just in case you did need more than one. But there isn't a huge amount in this office, which I think is quite common for offices. There's not really much need to have a lot of furniture, but I did like having the fireplace in here. I also added a couple of chimneys to the exterior of the house, but off camera, just, I guess, for the kind of visual effects of the smoke coming out of the chimney when you do light the fire. And I just thought it kind of looked cute to have that. Plus it feels very Victorian, because I imagine there'd be a lot of fireplaces in a traditional Victorian house where the central heating isn't really a thing. But now moving into the teens bedroom, I really wanted to use this swatch of the high school years bed, but I was struggling with the color scheme with the rest of the furniture for so long. But it was about this stage that I figured it out. I cut a lot of my decision paralysis out of the speed build, but I went with this teal and the purpley tone that I've been using in the rest of the house a lot through this whole room, and I really like it. I think it works well. I also grabbed the Decor to the Max kit wallpaper. I used that in the kids' bedroom as well, which we'll get to after this. And I think it works really nicely. The roses on it are more orangey in tone rather than the deep pink, but I think it's a nice additional accent color. So I feel like it works really well, and I was just so happy with this room. I also really wanted to use this canopy over the bed because it's not something I use very often. I forget about it a lot, or I feel like there's not enough space to include it. Often I'll put a teenager's bed against a wall, depending on the room size, because you don't really need two Sims to access either side of it, so I don't usually worry about having a bedside table either side. But this room was big enough to include that, so I did want to, and it made the canopy work really nicely. I think it helps as well that there's not a huge number of windows in this house, so I often find it difficult to add tall items into builds because there's a lot of windows, but there's pretty much just one or two in all of the bedrooms, which is very helpful. But I did also add a little desk in here, as I mentioned, and I end up using the one from Little Simsies kit. I've forgotten the name of it, the Comfy Gamer kit, and I just love that PC. I think it's such a good one. I also added the little PC tower on the floor next to the desk, so I will move the little backpack that's currently there to the other side of the room a bit later. And then behind the desk area, I also added a little ottoman just as a nice place for your Sims to sit, and added a few cushions to help bring over a bit more of that pinky tone. And I picked the ones from the Modern Luxe kit because they had almost an orangey pinky tone. It wasn't too bright, so it felt like it tied both of the colours together really well. And with the orangey light from the lighting that I used, which is from the Cozy Bistro kit, it really did make the whole room tie together nicely. So I really like that. It was a lot of fun doing this room. Not a colour scheme I would normally go for, but definitely fun to experiment with. Just cluttering up the desk, and I added a little bit over on this bureau or chest of drawers, but I ended up not really decorating it much at all because it felt like there was already a lot of decoration in that room. I think I just added off camera one of the artist's tablet items, so I figured that sim is probably a little bit artsy. But jumping into the kids' room, it's quite long and skinny, so I wanted to have 2 beds in here, and then there's just more space for your vampire sims to have children if you wanted. And I ended up using a lot of high school years again. I used these 2 bed swatches mostly because they both had the same colour of the wood tone for the actual bed frame, and then just switched up the bedding on both of them. So they both have a little bit of a different personality, but they're still similar in colour, so it works well in this one room. And then I cordoned off the 2 sections of the room using the screen from the Decor to the Max kit, which I've started doing in a few kids' rooms where I've got multiple beds, and I really like it. I think it's a good way to use those screens because I often struggle to use them. I think some of them are so pretty, but I've never been to a house that actually has a screen like that in real life. So it's something that I don't really know how to use very well. But anyhow, you can see that I'm just adding in some decor to both of the different spaces and trying to keep the theme of each one in line with the bed colour. But again, this Decor to the Max wallpaper, it felt like it tied both of the colours in really nicely. And as always with my Sims houses, I like to try and make it quite realistic, so I included a lot of wardrobe space. So they both have their own open wardrobe and also that tall kind of skinny wardrobe, just because sometimes I feel like the room's too small and it's probably better to put more gameplay associated items in there, but there's the rest of the house for gameplay stuff. They can go and do something downstairs, like watch TV or whatever. But in a bedroom, it just feels like it needs the storage. So I don't know, I prefer it when it's got lots of clothes storage because I just like the realism of it. But anyhow, just adding a bit more decor here and there to make the room look lived in. I was thinking about adding some desks so your kid sims could do their homework, but again, I prioritized having the extra wardrobes, so I scrapped that idea and figured they could either use their siblings' desk in the teenagers' room or just go downstairs and sit at the dining table or something. And there was also a bar space in the kitchen, so they can go ahead and do that. But we have pretty much finished this particular bedroom, so we'll be jumping up into the master bedroom, which is huge. And I wanted to use this canopy from Lovestruck. I picked this green tone as well because, again, I've had a bit of a bluey accent throughout the whole house alongside this deep red tone. And this green canopy, I think, was the best that worked out of the few swatches that we have for the canopies. There was only about 4. Which is kind of a shame. I wish they added more swatches in. But I did like it here, and I think the Growing Together rug really tied it in, and the bed is just from the Modern Luxe kit. So I think it works nicely. It's not a combo I have done before, but I do really like it. It's nice to have those canopies in game, although I use them a lot less than I was expecting. I think partly because the swatches are so limited. I really wish they had even a sheer version. That would be nice. And I much prefer this one to the other version, which is a bit more modern looking. I think this one looks a lot nicer just because it goes over the top of the bed as well, whereas the other just kind of surrounds it. Although I guess it's easier to actually click on the bed in live mode because there isn't as much in the way, unlike with this one. But I am just adding a bit more decor here and there to make the space look lived in. I added some more books, and I used that trick again where I popped them on the shelf from Little Simsies Comfy Gamer kit or from the Sleek Bathroom kit. Just size that shelf down, but sit the books on it and then place that on the wall, but so you can't see the shelf. And it means that your Sims can still use any interactive items like the bookshelves, because if you alt place those normally, they won't be able to access them. So it's a good hack if you want to do the same. But with that, we are coming to the end of the speed build portion of the video. I'm just jumping back outside to finish decorating the garden space, and also adding a few more planter boxes for your Sims to do some more gardening. But otherwise, I'll jump into the game and give you a quick tour of the completed build. And welcome back. So Here is the finished build, which I think looks so pretty. I really do like it. It's very bright and kind of colourful, which I think is really nice and fun. And then here's that pond at the front, as well as those shooting little water jets that I mentioned. And I did also add a sign and a ticket kiosk because, again, I usually, whenever I'm playtesting, realize that I missed something. So I added those in to kind of signify that this way is where the bar is. And then, of course, you can use the small business feature from businesses and hobbies to apply a bit of an entry fee or something. And then through here is the actual orchard. I also added this sign from Get Together just to almost give information about the orchard, which I thought was fun. The little bench spot. And then over here is kind of, I suppose, more the household's garden space. We've got another plasma tree and a plant pot, as well as a grill and a nice little table for your Sims to sit at. But going on the inside, this is the actual bar area. So your Sims would walk all the way around here to get in there. And it's got some nice seating. It's got a bar from Life and Death, as well as a lot of cozy bistro items. And then just down here is where that toilet is. So non-vampire Sims can also visit the bar, but otherwise you would come through this front door to access the main house. And this is the front entryway, which I didn't include on camera. And very simple, but I do like it. I think it's very effective. And then here's that weird wiggly kitchen space, which I think looks kind of fun. I do like the wacky shape to it. And then you've got the dining room back here, and through this archway is the living space with that secret sanctuary TV that looks like a painting, which is so pretty. And then there's just a nice bookshelf. And then going upstairs, we've got another very simple hallway here, and then into the kids' room, which is sectioned off for each of the 2 different kids who will be staying in here. And I've added a few bits and bobs for their various personalities. This one I figured would be into photography. So they've got the camera from Little Simsy's Comfy Gamer Kit and the Polaroids down there. And then with the bookshelf on this side, I figured this one would be more into reading and perhaps writing. And then over here, we've got that teens room. It makes me kind of sad that those lights disappear when you zoom in, but oh well. There's not too much going on this room. I do have a little plushy corner down here, which I think is super cute. There's that tablet I mentioned that your Sims can actually paint on and even do tattoo designs if they so wish. And then back here is the desk nook, as well as that little seating area and another wardrobe. And then the office, as you saw on camera, is very simple, bringing in that nice blue tone with the rug. Before we get to the family bathroom, which again I also didn't show on camera. It's very simple. There's a lot going on this back wall, but somehow I feel like it works. And then upstairs we've got a little hallway here with just a few items before you get into the, gosh, the camera is so jumpy on this lot. It's really frustrating, so I'm sorry about that. But here is the master bedroom with some nice seating by the window, as well as this beautiful canopy from, oh my gosh, from Lovestruck. And then the ensuite is the one that was put on the speed build. And it's got a little separate toilet room, which I think is quite nice and feels very luxurious. And that is the whole build. So I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to hit that like button if you did, subscribe if you haven't already, and enable notifications so you'll know when I next upload a video. I'll leave you with the screenshots for now. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.